Well, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Mark.
Uncle Dan has some kind of bee in his fucking bonnet.
Again?
Yeah. He's got a problem with bonnets and bees.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. It seems to be, it's catching, I think.
He confuses his pioneer lady outfit for his beekeeper outfit, and it always leads to hijinks.
I just feel like I always forget if the bees are supposed to be outside or inside the clothing.
Yeah.
It's just a thing about me.
It's like a USB port. You always do it wrong the first time.
Yeah.
So what's the bee in your bonnet today, old friend?
Here's the thing. I wanted to talk about, Uncle Mark, you were recently on, you betrayed us and did a guest spot on another show.
I did. I've been seeing other shows.
We're not worried.
What was the show?
This show, Truth Wanted, with a very nice young man who goes by Objectively Dan.
Right. So
he works out of the out of Dillahunty's outfit down to Austin.
Right. And not to be confused at all, by the way, with Uncle Dan.
With unobjectively Dan.
Unobjectively Uncle Dan.
Yes.
Anywho, here's the thing. One of the things that you guys talked about, you had a caller in.
Yes.
Who? Will you just sort of introduce what
Sure.
happened there?
Yeah. So you can look at this on I believe it's Truth Wanted's YouTube channel. But it's a call-in show, and these guys are kind of in the street epistemology business, right?
Sure.
And
everybody who's listening knows what that word means.
Right. So they basically just have this Socratic method of talking to people about their beliefs and asking a lot of questions, being very respectful about it.
Right.
Even when true loonies call in. So anyway, a guy called in. He wasn't a true loony. He was he was an atheist. He was just an older guy.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't religious, but he was expressing difficulty with pronouns. He did not like the idea that the world is changing in that particular way, and was really struggling. And he was being very sincere.
The kids these days, here's the thing, some of them don't accept the gender that was assigned to them at their birth.
Yeah.
And they go off on their own in their own ways.
A bunch of queers.
Well,
Goddamn.
if kids these days can express the fact that they don't accept the gender they were born with.
Right. So we had quite a lengthy conversation with this guy. And, he admitted at the end that he had a lot to think about. So that was helpful.
Yeah. So what I thought we'd talk about today is the fact that everybody, including our listeners, is going to encounter someone who is difficult to accept. In this world of confusion and misinformation and stuff, we're going to find people that we don't want to accept. Now, those listeners who are just recently out of religion or are considering leaving religion, they're going to suddenly be expected by people around them. They've grown up. They may have grown up in a world where they are expected by everyone around them not to accept
certain people,
and
certain behaviors, etc.
Gay people or black people or
coffee drinkers,
whatever.
Loose women,
right? Exactly. Whatever is listed on the sign that is carried by the protester.
Steeplejacks, Gandhi dancers,
dogs and cats living together.
Yes.
Anyway, so I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to talk about how to accept people and why to accept people, because I think that it's actually vitally important for us. And and it's not just people who are just out of a religion that will have trouble accepting people. I know lots of dyed-in-the-wool atheists who have a real trouble even just having a friendship or a communication with a religious person.
Right. So that's well, this atheist that called into the show, I don't know that he had a problem with religious people, but he was definitely struggling with this pronoun issue. I think in his case, he didn't admit to his age, but he told me I admitted I was 50. He said he was quite a few years older than me.
Right.
So obviously generation plays a big role.
It can do, but here's the thing. Eventually, if we're lucky, we're all going to be the old guy.
Yes.
And there is going to be a bunch of shit going on that's going to be tricky. And I think the practice of acceptance is something that we should all be working on always.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I want to start by saying that accepting other people does not mean that you have to agree with them. It doesn't mean that you have to approve of them. It doesn't mean you have to give up any of your own rights or opinions, or not, and you don't have to pretend like their opinions don't impact you. None of that is what we're talking about here. You don't have to pretend to like them or whatever. But here's the thing. One of the things that we need to realize as skeptical people who try to keep informed is that every human being comes to who they are not by their own careful machinations and working themselves until they are the person that they are, but rather through a series of events that often have nothing to do with them.
Right.
We all come to the place that we are because a universe of shit has led to that.
Because we have gone through a rock tumbler of nature and nurture.
Right.
And are the sum total of those experiences.
And some of us do a lot of work on ourselves and work very hard to become a better or a more informed person or whatever, and some people don't.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that even that fact, the fact that you're willing to work on yourself or the fact that you're not willing to work on yourself, is a function of a bunch of things that were out of your control. So a person may have been raised in a certain kind of household. They may have been subjected to whatever amounts of torment or whatever amounts
abuse.
or in the case of our fine president, whatever amounts of just blatant giving everything to this person without ever having to deal with any problems.
Right.
And all of this leads a person to be who they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear that, and there is no single source or reason why we are what we are. But I do think that our choices are certainly part of that process too, and whatever percentage of that is. But all three of us chose to leave religion.
Sure,
and we were raised that way. There were pressures for us to stay that way, and I think all of our listeners can kind of look at their lives and decide. I was given a choice, and I made that choice. Whether my upbringing kind of pushed me in one direction or another, we still got to where we are also, by both factors, by our external and our internal, right?
Absolutely. Right. I mean, what we're talking about here is not just what the external influences are, but also how your own chemistry and brain responded to those things.
Right.
All of that is a big mishmash, and most of it we have zero control over.
Right.
And then there's things like mental illness and stuff,
disability, a million factors that contribute to the person that suddenly presents themselves standing in front of you one day.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to talk about one of those people, your Uncle Dan.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about me because I remember a time when I was not accepting. Let's just stick with the trans people thing.
Yes.
Because it's a great sticking point for a lot of people right now. At this moment in history, it's a tricky one right now.
Right.
And I remember a time when Uncle Dan, you'll all be shocked to learn, was not tremendously accepting of trans people.
I would say that's probably true of all of us.
Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't want to accept it. I made fun of the concept. I had a lot of funny jokes about, being a man trapped in a woman's body. What a funny thing. Or a woman trapped in a man's body or whatever. And that's where I was. I didn't want to accept it. I assumed mental illness.
Yeah.
And what's great about that moment, what's fantastic about that moment, me going, well, they're just mentally ill and being dismissive because of that, is that I was sitting there as a person who has been not neurotypical. I've had ADHD my whole life. I've had depression most of my life and an anxiety disorder most of my life. I'm mentally ill. So for me to look at another person and go like, I dismiss you because I assume that what you're experiencing is mental illness.
You're crazy.
You dumb, crazy person.
Right.
That's just me being a dick.
Yeah.
Right? But there are lots of good reasons why we're dicks about these sorts of things. But I think what it points out is that in order to accept other people, we actually have to reflect on ourselves. It forces us to do that.
Absolutely. And I think the same thing, Uncle Dan, when I was in religion, I was so judgmental of people who weren't, gay people, transgender people was just such a subject that I didn't have any experience with.
Right.
It was so easy. And I think back on that kid that I was, and it makes me cringe. The fact that anybody could love me at all, or still does, right, is just amazing to me.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I'm absolutely with you. Is that I think it kind of starts with the understanding that people should accept you, and you're not a peach.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and I think so many of the fucking world's problems come down to a lack of empathy. And as a person, for whatever reason, this is how I came out of the rock tumbler. I was born into a house where being an incredibly sensitive, deeply empathetic person was not rewarded.
Right.
And so
that's why you weren't either of those things.
Yes, that's why you became the callous asshole that you are.
yeah. So, but to watch people treat others with such a lack of empathy, which again is really just can basically be summed up as imagine yourself in their position.
Yeah.
Right. How can you not look at an immigrant,
Wow.
struggling to get across the border just so they can wash your fucking sheets, right? How can you not look at that person and feel something? Or a trans person, and this is what drove me crazy about this caller, is it's like when that person walks up to you for the first time and says, hello, this is my name.
Here are my pronouns.
Here are my pronouns. You decide that somehow you have the ability to negate a lifetime of experience and struggle and self-realization because it makes you uncomfortable. That's bananas to me.
Here's the problem, and I think I'm going to be able to challenge even you guys in just a minute.
Yeah.
We all have stories about people. And we have stories about how the world works. And and as we get older, we become more and more sure that our story about how this universe works is correct.
Right.
Because
you two are wrong.
Okay, thank you for that. So when someone as me, as a straight white male, for whom straightness and whiteness and maleness has always worked great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys ought to try this.
That's a pretty good hand to draw.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
You guys should try it. It's fantastic. But it's hard to look at the world and go, maleness might not work for somebody.
Right.
Or straightness might not work for somebody. And go, well, it's worked so great for me.
Yes.
Everything, all the pieces fall into place when I'm straight and white and male.
How come it doesn't work for you?
Why can't you? So like there's a whole lot of shit going on in a person's brain, and it's a lot about the story of this other person. And I know, and you can, for you, Mark, it can be easy to look at an immigrant and say that person has struggled, that person is, or look at a refugee especially and say that person struggled in their own country. Let's take them in and make them feel welcome and enfranchise them in our society.
Tear gas them and make them the enemies of an entire society.
But it's also easy if the story is told differently for someone to look at them and say, they're trying to hurt me and I'm trying, and I need we need to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is we need to, this is a process that's about challenging your own stories, and it's about challenging your own biases, because we're all biased in some way or another.
Sure.
So I want to invite our listeners to sort of look at their lives, find some people, because we can all think of them, but even people who are close to you, family members, friends, that sort of thing, who have something about them that you don't like. You know what I mean? That people who do it, if your partner or your spouse doesn't clean the dishes the way you think they ought to, and you don't know why they don't. If your podcasting mate doesn't always have clean glasses for you when you think that he should.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about the elephant in the room.
I don't like being called an elephant, but that's okay. So like, and there are things that are that genuinely seem like real life foibles in people, problems that they should do this better. That person is a slob, and I hate going over to their house, and they should do better. Now, I want to be clear that I don't think that there's anything wrong with if you're open, if you're a kind, honest, open person, and you're able to, with generosity, exert some influence on someone to help them improve their own lives. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, and I also don't think there's anything wrong with having a little bit of tension. I have a friend who is chronically 5 minutes late for everything. And he's a dear friend, and I love him, but it drives me crazy. There's nothing I can do about it. So I live with it. I swallow it. Well, and it will expose itself into murder-suicide soon enough. But you know what I mean?
There's a difference between a quirk or a you don't do dishes often. Or
right.
That's all behavioral issues.
Yeah.
But something like race, gender, sex, how a person appears on, how a person has decided this is where they are on a spectrum because they've come to that. That's very different. Those are different things.
Yeah.
Those are immutable traits.
Right.
That are in a different category than, but they don't sweep off it.
Right. So, but part of what I want to get at is that even if someone behaves in an unacceptable way, you can accept that person. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean you have to love them, or you don't have to hang out with them all the time or whatever. But part of what I'm talking about is that people are facts. Mm. A person as they are is the fact of the matter. Mm-hmm. And we, as people who believe in acknowledging the world as it is, as skeptics, we need to start accepting people as facts and not try to make them into something that they're not for our own comfort.
Yeah, and I think the really good news about that, the easiest part is it doesn't cost anything. I can't remember if it was her mom or her dad, somebody saying, and you've all heard this, referring to black people, now they want to be called African American.
Right.
And it's like, well, whatever they want to be called these days. It's like, what?
Right.
What does it cost you?
It neither picks your pocket nor breaks your leg.
And if somebody wants to be referred to as her or them, what does it cost you to make that adjustment?
Well, I think there is a personal cost for a lot of these things. And that's why I don't want to downplay the personal cost, because there is an emotional and psychological cost. You have to self-confront about how you think the world works in order to say they when someone stands before you and you're used to gendering them. And I have felt that. I mean, the trans thing I had long accepted and I was fine with, and this person was assigned he at birth and has decided that she is a she, and I'm fine with that, and I'm down, and I'm an advocate, and I'm an ally. Mm. But when a young kid came up to me and said, they and them are my pronouns, I struggled.
Did you tense up?
I struggled. It was not easy for me. Because I am just so used to the binary. I'm so if you're one or t'other, I get it. I'm there. I'm on board.
Right.
If you try to be a neither, I have a lot more thinking to do.
Right.
And I did have a lot more thinking to do.
And how to go?
Well, I think it's an ongoing process for me.
Yeah.
I'm not there. I'm to a place where I can accept a person, though. So if a person comes to me and says, I'm they and them, I will fuck up a number of times.
Yes.
And I don't know. I don't know why I can't wrap my brain around it easy, but I can't.
Yeah.
But I fuck up and then I apologize and then I redouble my efforts.
But I think honestly, fumbling it must be acceptable.
Yeah. Every trans person that I personally know.
Yeah.
Is very willing. They're always willing to forgive an honest mistake.
I always mix up the gender of my cats.
He does.
I say he and she all incorrectly all the time.
He misgenders his cats.
Do you dead name them too? That's not okay.
So I had a friend in college who his name was Tristan, and at some point, I don't know, junior year, he insisted on being called Tristan, and I refused, and I will refuse to this day.
Well,
wow, you guys are
there.
assholes.
You go.
So
no, I'm just kidding.
But okay, so Dan, you're struggling with the they and them, and I respect that you're acknowledging that, and that's something that you're willing to tell the studio audience.
Yeah.
But there's a larger issue there about acceptance and tolerance and being. And I don't know if you're calling acceptance and tolerance kind of the same thing here, because I think they're a little different.
I'm not.
I think they're different.
I don't think that they're
But
the same.
people should understand that somebody's personhood and their humanity are not predicated on you understanding it.
Correct.
Right? So in your head, don't understand it all you want. But it's like I said to this caller on the show the other day. He's like, I don't like being told what I have to do. I don't like being asked to change my behaviors. And I said, well, anybody can ask you anything.
Right.
What you do is up to you. Like, the asking doesn't force an outcome.
Right.
So if a person comes up to you and says, my name is Rebecca, my pronoun is her and she, and you say, no, I feel like you're a Tim and you're a he.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're an asshole at that point.
Right. But
Right.
we do this all the time when friends get married and change their name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just accept it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. They get divorced, we change it back. It's fine. You know,
It's true. When there are social moments where we're all just super okay with changing somebody's name.
Yeah.
We're super good with it. And if we can look for those moments, if we can look for these places where we were okay with it for X and we're not okay with it for Y, we start to understand that we're the dick. You know what I mean?
right.
We're the asshole,
Yeah.
not them. And so I think that acceptance of other people and taking people at face value is a practice of sanity.
Yeah.
It is a way of saying, it is not a way of like accepting bad behavior. It is not, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to say, oh, because I accept you, your racism is okay. You don't have to say that at all.
Right.
But I know that you're a racist. That doesn't make you necessarily, holistically, a bad person or a person of no value.
Definitely not a person of no value. It is it definitely contributes to.
I don't want. I may not want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
And I will decry when you act in a bad way. And I will also work to influence you to become not racist. I will do that work.
Yeah, if I think there's a possibility that a conversation might, or several conversations might change a terrible behavior like that, I think people are worthwhile, and that's worth the effort. But for something in 2019 like being a racist, I think they're long odds. But
Right. Well, and be aware of the fact that anytime you endeavor to change another person in any way, you need to do some self-confrontation about your own judgmental your own
and what
judgment.
your motivation is to be doing this.
What from what part are you coming? Because if you're doing it because this person is an asshole and they need to change who they are and blah blah blah, you're probably not going to reach them.
Right.
So, like, if you haven't accepted this person as a person of value in the universe,
Yeah.
you're not going to reach them anyway. You might as well
Right.
just give up.
well, and it doesn't help that we live in the most polarized time in our, at least our lifetimes. That it is, people have chosen sides, and the value of a person is kind of dictated by whether they fall on your side or the other side of the political spectrum.
Yeah.
So it's more important now than ever that we who have dedicated ourselves to having a pragmatic view of the world and the universe demonstrate that.
Well, and so I would challenge you all to look at people that you really don't want to accept. Someone like a kid in a MAGA hat smirking at an elderly native gentleman, and go and ask yourself, what could have led to this person being there? And also, just, he's a kid. Can we accept that people make mistakes and that he might become an awesome person later?
Well,
And
Yeah, he's going to be on the Supreme Court at some point.
well, yes, that's definitely
Well, and
going to happen.
this, not to get on this tangent because it's a big tangent, but looking at that kid, my initial reaction was rage and disgust and blah blah blah, and I still feel those things. But I also know that when I was a 16-year-old kid, I was a conservative Mormon community. Could I have been that kid? I can't say no.
Yeah.
It's when a kid is raised in Kentucky and he's sent to a
all boys Catholic
all
school.
boys Catholic school and all of these things, like, we don't. The fact is that you never know
Yeah.
the factors that have led to a person to bad behavior or or to something that you don't like about them, that doesn't nullify their humanity.
And what should have happened was the adult should have stepped in,
Yes.
accepting him as a person, probably a fine kid, and said something about his fucking behavior.
You are way off track here, kid.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
are way outside
Look,
of the lines.
you have value, but so does that man. And
Right.
we are supposed to be empathetic and accepting of each other. I'm getting hot and bothered.
Yes.
But I don't know if you were going to go in this direction, Dan, but I think it's something that we've all observed in our community, our skeptical atheist community for a long time, is there is a tendency to be incredibly black and white sometimes.
Yeah.
And to really...
And especially right now in this moment in history, everybody online wants to, you are either a good guy or you are a bad guy, and you are all the way on one side or the other of this thing.
And I'm completely calling the atheist skeptical community on the carpet, because we have a terrible reputation with misogyny. Mm-hmm. This is a white men's club.
Yeah.
We are not, this is even true in the gay community, we are shitty to trans people. We're shitty to bisexual people. But specifically as an atheist community, I think we have a lot of fucking work to do.
Yeah.
And it's tough because we don't have a pope, right? We are the cats that are proverbially hard to herd.
Yes.
And so it's really all we can do as individuals is kind of speak this truth.
Yeah.
And Dan and I have talked about in the future doing some kind of presentations on stuff like this to say, look, we have got to stop. We've got to do something about this reputation.
Yeah.
We have got to find a way to reach people that need what we have to offer and not make this a scary fucking community. Right. So
it's hard not to be smug and judgmental when you've gone through the journey that we as non-believers and all of our listeners have gone through. But it's incredibly important.
When you think you've found truth out of the muck and mire of falsehood, and you finally brushed off a little nugget of reality, and you're like, ha, all of these other people were telling me falsehoods, and I finally actually waded through the crap to find this thing. Yeah, we tend to be a little smug about it.
Right, and oftentimes the rocket fuel behind that journey of self-discovery is a lot of pain and a lot of anger.
Right.
Right, and it's so easy to exteriorize that, to externalize that, and take a shit on people. And there are people, there are people who deserve it. There are religious hucksters in the world doing harm.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you want to talk shit about Joel Osteen, I'm there. Right?
Sure.
But the average individual Mormon that we share our community with is
just a good person.
They're just folk.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, we don't have the luxury of having some shit dogma to hide behind. So if we're mean to a trans person or unaccepting,
it's all on you.
That's you.
Yeah.
If we can't, if a Mormon, you meet a Mormon, and you say something really mean spirited about their religion to them, that's on you. We don't have the book to say, well, it's not me. God said this. No, that's you.
It always was you.
It always was you.
Right.
But we have nothing to hide behind.
The fig leaf has been removed.
We have a bigger responsibility to be better people. That's just the fact of the matter.
So I think the call here is to self-confront on these things, to be gentle with yourself about you, and then maybe you can be gentle with yourself about some people around you.
Right.
Tristan, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think
I'm going to be okay with that.
Again, remember, somebody else's humanity does not hinge on you understanding it.
Right.
So if you can't understand it at the first meeting, take some time and try to do it. So by the second meeting, you're less likely to be an asshole.
Well, can I just say one quick thing? If somebody wants to be called something different, and you're not there yet inside of yourself, that doesn't mean you can't do that thing while you work on that.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like, you can just say, I don't quite get it. I'm not there yet. But you want to be called they, or you want to be called she.
Fake it till you make it,
Fake
baby.
it till you make it. It doesn't cost you anything.
If you don't want to be an asshole.
Yeah. Say, all right, I'm going to do this thing because you want it. You've asked for it. No problem. I will continue to work on it.
Yes.
Now, I just, we're going to get into trouble here. I get it.
Yeah.
We're all going to, I just want to remind everybody, you're all going to encounter things that are going to blow your mind. You're going to encounter someone who identifies as unicorn. And then what the fuck you do is up to you, and how you respond to it is up to you. But always remember that even if they claim that they're of a different species, that doesn't negate their humanity? Question mark? Wait, what? What did I just say? I'm not sure.
When I was 4 years old,
Their unicornity.
When I was 4 years old, I identified as a ladybug. And
It's true.
Uncle Mark would not accept it.
Oh, Uncle Mark.
I think I was the most accepting of your ladybug transition.
You're a man bug.
Well, Maya Angelou, of course, said when someone tells you who they are, believe them.
Right.
And I think that's a nice nice little coda to live by.
Right on.
There you go. All right. Well, with that said, let's move on.
Let's move on.